Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you all here, so many of you as well. I'd like to welcome all of our guests if they'd like to join me, just to give you a little bit of an overview. Hi, everyone. Delighted to have this event being hosted. I'm Sharon Walpole, Director at Careermap, and we are hosting this event, me and the lovely, I'm saying lovely again, James from Cohesion, if you want to give a little wave there. And I'll let everyone just a quick counter through of who we have with us today. I'll make a start then with some little bit of housekeeping about us and then hand over to James and we'll carry on from there. So Emily, do you want to start?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Emily Austin. I'm the CEO of the Association of Apprentices.
And Zach?
Hi everyone, I'm Zach Ward-Perkins. I'm Head of Further Education and Adult Skills Spending at HM Treasury.
Right, and Lucy?
Good afternoon everyone, I am Lucy Hunte, National Programme Manager for Apprenticeships at Health Education England.
Great, and last but certainly not least, James.
Good morning everybody, my name's James Austin and I'm one of the directors here at Cohesion. And before the rumours start, no relation to Emily, so just just to get that out there.
Great. Okay, well, I'll get started and you'll see the rest of everyone as we go through. Thanks, everyone, and see you shortly. You got to sign off there, Zach. So there we go. Great. Okay, everyone. So we've got a really fantastic panel joining us today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I know the question is always, yes, this session is being recorded. We will share it at the after the event with everyone who's registered to the event. As you've already, many noticed already, there's a chat box. Feel free to put any comments, questions you have into the chat. We will have a Q&A after everyone has had a chance to speak. I will scoop up all the questions and we'll have a panel discussion. So don't worry, we will get to you as long as we don't run out of time. And also if we don't get to every question, we'll make sure that it gets to the right person and they will get back to you afterwards. So on with the show. As I said, I'm Sharon Walpole. Hopefully you know me, most of you people. I'm from Careermap, which is essentially a jobs board for young talent, as well as having a lot of content that supports it. We are Careermap Media Group. We do a lot more than what people realize from our website, including live events and our magazines. Most importantly is that we do speak with a large number of employers across a breadth of industries and sectors. And they use us really for branding. Things have shifted since we've been in the sector. Careermap's been going since 2013, so it's our 10-year anniversary this year. And you will see that what we've seen is that the employers started very much in the apprenticeship space, pushing apprenticeships, talking about apprenticeships, but particularly over time and with the impact of the pandemic, we've noticed, and so have our employers notices, that there is more of an approach about actually understanding sectors. There's a real misunderstanding of what different sectors are like, what the opportunities are, 10, 20 different jobs for the same job titles for the same job. And also there's often quite a lot of misunderstanding about, or not even knowing about jobs because they're new and changing. So it makes it very hard. We think about young people being Gen Z and being very tech savvy, and they will just find whatever they need online, but you don't know what you don't know when you're looking for it. So employers are moving away from talking about always just specific types of opportunities and really talking about who they are, what their sectors are, what the opportunities are, and that can be all the different types of training schemes that are out there, apprenticeships and even graduate recruitment. They're beginning to look at it more as a talent pool and what they need from their talent pool to go forward and meet the needs of their sectors and their industry. like this event, we do lots of live events as well. We find that the number of people that are attending some of our events, in fact, Lucy will be speaking soon. She was a guest for one of ours with the NHS, and we had over 700 different young people joining that event. So it shows that there's a real appetite to find out more, to understand what's happening in a sector and what the opportunities are. And with, like I said, all the new job roles, sometimes you have to speak and reach out specifically. But that's me done rambling on. I'm going to hand over to James, who's done a bit with Cohesion, that has talked about different current trends and what they're seeing happening from their point of view. And it's been brilliant working with you on this, and I'm really excited about how many people are here.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for the kind handover there, Sharon. So as we said at the beginning, my name is James Austin, and I'm one of the directors here at Cohesion. I'm really excited to be on this event, which we're co-hosting with Careermap. I've worked with Sharon and Careermap for a number of years now. And I think, especially at the moment, the time of the year we're at, obviously we've got National Apprenticeship Week just around the corner. We thought it'd be a really good opportunity to kind of have this discussion today, and I suppose put the topic of apprenticeships on sort of center stage. So I know some of you are going to be familiar names and faces with Cohesion, but obviously there are a few others on the call today who may not have come across us. So who are Cohesion? We are a leading emerging talent recruitment provider. We work across numerous industries and sectors, and on behalf of our clients, manage the recruitment process and shortlisting process across apprenticeship programs, graduate programs, work experience, etc. So that's who we are, and obviously you can see that's very similarly to Careermap, an example of some of the clients that we work with on a day-to-day basis. How can Cohesion support clients? So I think if you look at the kind of candidate process and the candidate journey, Careermap are very much involved at the front end of the process, looking at the attraction and engagement with their target audience. Cohesion is a little bit more downstream from that. So we work with our clients looking at the shortlisting process, the onboarding, etc. And every year we manage literally tens of thousands of applications on behalf of our clients. And I think understanding not only what the client is looking for, but also keeping that process very candidate-centric is absolutely critical to success. We're seeing technology naturally becoming more and more prevalent within the recruitment process. And I think when we're looking at the apprenticeship market specifically, it's really important to consider that typically the candidates are a little bit younger, probably need a little bit more hand-holding throughout the process and support both during, before the actual application process, during the process, and especially afterwards as well. We support candidates throughout the process, and where necessary, and obviously where our clients sort of need, can support with greater ethnic and gender diversity, social mobility, and that whole broader context of broadening participation as well. It's very much a partnership approach with our clients, and obviously work with a number of different external partners, like Careermap as an example, to really develop a comprehensive early talent strategy. So why is this topic so relevant? So our organisation has been operating since 1986. I wasn't there at the time, you'll be pleased to hear. But I think for the first time, we're really noticing a distinct shift in how organisations are viewing and developing their early talent strategies. We're seeing more and more candidates applying to university. But this year, I think there's about 80,000 that weren't able or weren't offered a position. The numbers suggest that by 2026, there'll be about 350,000 students every year who are applying to university and not being offered a space. And the next obvious place to go to is to look at that apprenticeship market. If we look at UK apprenticeships over the last sort of 10-year period, we can see a steady increase in those numbers. Like graduates as well, obviously COVID and the impacts of that saw a slight decline, but we're now noticing that upward curve again. And specifically from a Cohesion perspective, if we look at the pie chart on the right-hand side, The outer circle is our kind of split of placements in 2012. If we look at it now over the last 10-year period, the number of placements that we're making or apprenticeship roles that we're offering has grown by about 400%. So there's an absolute definite increase in terms of direction of strategy and where organizations are going. What are the influencing factors? It's a bit of a perfect storm at the moment, and I think it's not just one isolated factor here. I think it's a number of things all coming together. But we look at rising living costs, obviously in the news today, I think it's about 10.5% inflation. Things like that are going to impact people's choices. The cost of attaining a university degree, I think the average student leaving university is now walking away with about a £50,000 debt. You've got the apprenticeship levy, and I think organisations are cottoning on to the fact that they're paying a huge amount of tax into that levy, which isn't then being utilised, and they're now wanting to kind of draw from that. We've spoken about capacity at universities and what dynamic that might have on the industry. Increase in interest and variety of degree level apprenticeships. Increased awareness, so all of the work that Sharon and Careermap do, promoting alternative pathways and different opportunities into that transition from education into employment, and also skill shortages not being met by typical degree subjects. So I think from an industry perspective, we're seeing more and more students still wanting to go to university, but the courses that they're wanting to apply for and what they're coming out with don't necessarily reflect what industry is demanding. There's so many opportunities in STEM-based learning or engineering or sustainability, green energy, etc., but there just aren't the number of candidates that are going to meet that demand. And I think by doing an apprenticeship program or companies offering apprenticeships in those spaces, they can start to fill some of those voids. My last slide, very, very quickly, I just thought I would leave you with a few kind of anecdotes or sort of facts around the apprenticeship marketplace at the moment. So since 2012, there have been a 64% growth in number of apprenticeships in the UK. You can now become a GP through an apprenticeship program. I learned this just before Christmas. It's an amazing thing to be able to now do. Over 50% of university applications in 2022 also registered an interest in an apprenticeship. So this is something that we're seeing from the students coming up out of schools as well. 22% more active apprenticeships in the UK than the previous 10-year period. The largest profile of people registering for apprenticeships are the 25 plus group. So if we break it down into sort of 19 and below, 19 to 25 and 25 plus, out of those three categories, the profile with the largest number of applications was that 25-year plus group. HM Treasury, and we're going to be hearing from Zach in a minute, but funding from HM Treasury has grown for apprenticeships by over £500 million in the last 5 years, which is a phenomenal amount. Level 3 is the most popular level based on new starts. Intermediate level roles are in decline. And the last one, 2 million new apprenticeships in the UK since over the last 10-year period. So again, some of those stats I'm sure people are familiar with anyway, but I just thought it kind of sets the scene for today's debate. And I'm really, lovely segue, really keen to hand over now to Zach, who's going to talk us through a little bit about obviously his role in the Treasury and I suppose some of the stance coming out of central government. So Zach, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, James. Hi, everybody. So yeah, my name is Zach Ward-Perkins. I'm the head of further education and adult skill spending at the Treasury. So I work in what's called the education spending team, and we work with the Department of Education to negotiate their budgets on all areas of education, and so including on apprenticeships. I think the kind of key view to give today is that like the HM Treasury and government view of apprenticeships is a very positive one. We very much see it as the government's premier in-work training offer, and as James alluded to in his presentation, have backed it with substantial funding for the programme because of the benefits we see from it. I think the first thing I'd highlight about that shows the government's commitment to apprenticeships is the breadth of the service. So since the kind of new service took over in 2017, 600 employer design standards have become available, and those are in sectors as diverse as engineering, manufacturing, creative arts and public services. I think we kind of see apprenticeships as something that should be available for the entire economy, and have made sure that we kind of put into place the processes to ensure that has happened. I think you also see the kind of government's big backing for the system in just the number of learners. So over 321,000 learners started an apprenticeship in academic year 2020-2021. Obviously, that comes with a large amount of government funding. We fund 95% of the training costs for apprentice SMEs, and that comes with substantial figures. So I think you can see that government really supports the system through that. Obviously, we have seen a slight drop-off in apprenticeship numbers since, I think, around 2010, but that's largely because since 2017, we took steps to kind of strengthen the quality requirements. So we've actually seen slightly fewer, but much better quality apprenticeships. So now you have 20% training off the job and a 12-month minimum duration requirement and endpoint assessments. We think that is beneficial both for people doing apprenticeships and for employers themselves, kind of make sure that apprenticeships kind of really upskilling people and making sure we kind of get the best productivity gains we can from the system. And finally, I think this is really shown by apprenticeships having really good outcomes. So our stats tells us that 91% of apprentices remained in employment or went on to further training after completing their apprenticeship. We think that's due to kind of satisfaction with the service amongst employers and apprentices themselves. And also you see really high wage returns, which suggests that there are real productivity gains. So 40% increase in earnings by age 26 for men and 21% increase for women. I think you could question why it's less for women than for men. I think that might be due to wider factors in the labour market rather than apprenticeships themselves, but we still see it as something which is kind of producing beneficial results for all and a really positive system. And finally, I would just say that kind of as the government, we really think we're really keen to respond to people's views and concerns or just general opinions about apprenticeships and just try and make the system work better. We're kind of constantly reviewing what we're doing, trying to get it right, and talking to business groups and smaller employers as well about what works and what doesn't. And we've always taken steps to try and change the system where it's needed to. So, for example, during COVID-19 pandemic, we introduced employer hiring incentives to make sure numbers didn't drop off, and we keep being committed to kind of reviewing that where necessary. But on that kind of note, always keen for ideas, and I'm sure many people might have questions and opinions. So yeah, very interested for people's views. I see someone's picked up on for men and women. I do agree that is a significant difference. But very happy to be here today, and thanks for listening to me. I'll pass back to Sharon, I think.
Thank you very much. That's absolutely brilliant and really interesting. There have been a couple of questions that have popped in. Do keep putting them in the chat. There will be a Q&A following the event. So we'll pick them all up then and answer those, which if we run out of time, we'll make sure that we get in touch with you. Also, we had a question about the slides. Yes, we are recording it. You'll be able to see the recording and we will send the slides out as well. So next up, we have Lucy Hunte, who is the National Program Manager for Apprenticeships at the NHS. So I will hand over to you, Lucy.
Thanks, Sharon. Good afternoon, everyone. So just for a bit of context, I want to tell you about the health education talent care agenda. We obviously have been focusing on apprenticeships, but it goes to kind of pre-employment and before that. So part of our team, we cover volunteering and work experience. Traineeships are up there, so very disappointed to hear that they are going to be withdrawn. T-levels, and the heart of everything that we do is around widening participation and access and increasing diversity in the workforce. For us in the NHS, it's really important that our workforce is representative of the communities we serve. So increasing that diversity is a huge focus for us. We've been using apprenticeships since the start of the reforms. We've used them to attract new recruits and talent, but they're also for us a fantastic tool to upskill the existing workforce. We've done a lot of work on progression routes to higher and degree level apprenticeships, and we now have kind of level 2 to level 7 career pathways for all of the key roles that we cover in the NHS. We are obviously the biggest employer in England, so that's 1.3 million employees, and we're now estimated to contribute over £220 million of levy per year. Just to give you an idea of the rise and growth that we've had, so in 16-17 we had just over 1,000 apprenticeship starts, and that was from level 2 to level 5, and that has grown to 25,000 from level 2 now up to level 7 during a pandemic, which is a fantastic achievement. And we had 86 different apprenticeship standards in use. I can see Pete's on the call, but we are working with UCAS on offering that route neutral apprenticeship applications, and we really think that is going to be a fantastic area because we know there has been a huge demand and growth in the interest for doing degree apprenticeships, and we really want to have that kind of parity of esteem, and for anybody looking to do a degree to be able to see the apprenticeship route via the traditional route as well. As I said, we use apprenticeships in the NHS as a way to attract new talent, but also to progress our existing staff. For example, the first cohorts of registered nurses, for example, were existing healthcare support workers who could never afford to give up work and go back to university in the traditional sense. So being able to support them to achieve their dreams of being registered professionals has been really, really exciting. As I said, we use them to support social mobility and widening participation. Really, really exciting around the doctor apprenticeship, and I'll cover that in a moment, but I think that's a fantastic example about raising the parity of esteem of apprenticeships, and now we're going to be able to attract young people into the medical profession that could never have previously afforded to do the traditional route. Biggest bugbear for us at the moment is the lack of impartial careers advice and guidance. I'm actually going through this with my 15-year-old at the moment. She's been told that she's far too clever to do an apprenticeship and that she must stay on to do A-levels. Being my daughter, she said, obviously you don't know my mum, so now I'm booked in to do careers advice sessions for all of the school, but I think that's a huge issue. And I do understand the challenges, you know, where schools are competing for funding. I've been into various schools in my area, and, you know, I have the poor careers advisors saying to us, you know, please don't poach any of the students because I'm really going to get in trouble. So it's really exciting to see that the Baker Clause is actually now going to be much more enforced, because I really think that young people need to have this information to be able to make informed decisions. You know, and I think we're seeing that in terms of the rise of interest in degree apprenticeships. Something to bear in mind is that unlike traditional routes, you know, there is no fixed entry, and that's something that I find the young people do really struggle with. You know, they're given time in school to do their UCAS applications, but for the apprenticeships, that is something that they really have to do on their own. And unlike UCAS, they can't just apply for 5 all in one go. They now have to do kind of tailored individual applications. So I really think that's something that young people need to be supported with, and we need to kind of just raise the parity of esteem, but also just talk about the fantastic benefits that there are for apprenticeships. Work experience is really, really important in terms of applying for apprenticeships. So it's not essential, but I think the pandemic taught us one thing, and we now have a lot of kind of virtual day in the life of videos, so that a young person and schools can kind of have an idea of what a podiatrist or occupational therapist or whatever it might be, they can kind of have a look and experience that day-to-day realities of what it would be like to work in the NHS. And also something I think it's really worth pointing out, that you should look at a level 3 or a level 5 apprenticeship, because then you can top up to the degree. I was speaking to a young person yesterday who is doing A-levels, is really unhappy, and was considering giving up to go and work in JD Sports because she wanted to earn an income, and she'd never been told about the opportunities of a level 3 or level 5 apprenticeship. So to her, that was a real eye-opener. So I really think that we need to make sure that people are looking at those career pathways, and that you could join at level 2 or level 3 and then still progress up to degree. As I said, really, really exciting news around the medical doctor apprenticeship. I've hot off the press, I think the starts for the first pilots are going to be kind of pushed now to January 2024, because we have been waiting for funding from Department of Health and Social Care to support this. But again, the real aim of this programme is to support widening participation from those from underserved communities. I think the stat is that currently 70% of consultants in the NHS have a family member that is a consultant. So we really need to make sure that, you know, we can attract the young people that have got the academic qualifications and, you know, just couldn't afford to be unpaid for effectively 5 to 7 years. So they will now be doing a 60-month apprenticeship programme, and it's the exact same academic entry requirements for the medical degree. We've had a lot of pushback from people talking about dumbing down the profession, but it is the exact same degree, approved by the GMC, but will give these apprentices the opportunity to earn while they learn. There will be more guidance released shortly, but the focus on recruitment and selection, but we'll definitely be using contextual factors to support that widening participation. So whether it be postcodes, free school meals, first person in the family to go to university, they're kind of all the measures that we will be looking at. You will get these slides, so there is a link there to more FAQs around that, and just keep an eye on that page as it will be updated as and when we've got more information. Touched on this already, but this is around kind of lifelong careers, and I think this is something that we really need to stress, that this is an example of the pathway to nursing that just shows that you can come in at level 2 or level 3 and progress via level 5 to level 6. So, you know, we really want people to be able to aspire to achieve the degree level program, but we also really have a critical workforce needs for all of those other roles. So I think just, you know, to be able to share and show this kind of pathway is really helping us in terms of attracting talent in, but also in terms of that career progression and retention. Paramedic, there's a huge increase in that. You know that obviously we've got strikes at the moment, and that's a real concern. But again, just highlighting the fantastic route to the paramedic degree, and that can be via the level 3 and then progressing to the level 4. So again, you know, we really want to welcome anybody that's interested to have a conversation with their local ambulance trust about how they can be supported into the NHS. And this is obviously a hot topic as well, because young people always think the NHS, you know, they can name doctors and nurses and push paramedic. But remember, we've got these huge back office functions. So this year in particular, really going to be focusing on digital data and IT roles, the people professions, finance. So definitely do, when you are talking to young people around the possibilities of the NHS, that, you know, we have got these huge options. I know with the young people that I support and mentor, they would never consider the NHS as a IT role, for example. So it's just making sure that we raise awareness around that. When you get the slides, there is links on the bottom as well about all the different pathways that we have available. This is the Health Careers website. So this is a fantastic website for when you are having conversations with schools or young people. We know that it's really difficult for a young person to make a career about their lifelong career ambitions. So there's a few quizzes where they can kind of naturally be matched to programs or subjects that they are interested in. So that's definitely worth having a look at. And also this is the Healthcare Apprenticeship Standards online website. So it's really good to sign up to the newsletter of that, so you'll be kind of kept up to date about any developments in the world of the NHS, and it really is just like a one-stop shop about everything apprenticeships in the NHS. And the pathway tool that I talked about is on there as well, so that's definitely a good resource to have a look at. And again, you'll get these slides, but again, there's just some more kind of places to go for advice and guidance. And then, as I said, the quiz and the resources that are available to download. There's events planners. There's going to be information, obviously, about activities in National Apprenticeship Week. So it's really good to just make sure you're connected within all of these. And that's me. I'm going to hand back to Sharon now.
Really lots of fantastic information in there, and lots of really good comments and positive feeling for it. Really delighted to have Emily here, who's going to be talking about it from the whole subject, from the not necessarily from the point of view, but what the experiences some of their apprentices are having at the moment. I'll hand over to you to tell more.
Thanks, Sharon, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of once you've got an apprenticeship rather than what's available for apprentices, because actually it's really helpful insight, whether you're talking to a student considering an apprenticeship or whether you are an employer who's designing a programme or a provider who's working with an employer to design a programme. I think often the apprentice voice, the people that are actually doing it right now, is sometimes missed. And so I'm here to represent that and tell you a little bit about the Association of Apprentices. So this started a little while ago. Our founder had been doing some work. He's an SME and had been doing some work with government around SME and how to increase apprenticeships. And what he found is that often apprentices going into small companies feel isolated and lonely and actually don't have a peer group like you might have when you go to university. And wouldn't it be great if you could connect those apprentices to other apprentices to share peer experiences? And, you know, we know at school, we know in university that where you are working towards a learning outcome together with other people, actually you're likely to do better. So he kicked this off a few years ago, but actually we only really came to market last year. And the association is the only sort of dedicated social and professional networking organisation for apprentices only. one of our sort of biggest offers for apprentices is an online platform. So if you think LinkedIn, but only for apprentices, that's what it is. And we have over 4,500 members currently, and we are growing rapidly as apprentices realise the benefits of connecting together to share experiences. We also offer online masterclasses for apprentices based on subjects that they tell us are important to them, social and professional development subjects like motivation, well-being, how to communicate and present, etc. And we offer physical events as well. So we set up during the pandemic somewhat, but we're able now to offer physical events for apprentices in different locations in the UK to meet. And I think as a benefit of all of that, what you've got is lots of apprentices coming together to discuss their experiences. And actually, we then get to share that with the likes of everybody on this call to help you understand what matters the most to the people that are going through the programmes right now. And that's what today is all about. Now, there is loads of data out there, loads of research that's really important to understand if you're looking into apprenticeships or you're designing apprenticeships about some of the pitfalls, some of the not so great bits, because that actually helps you to provide a really great offer for apprentices, or indeed help students to understand what type of apprenticeships they should be looking for. So some research was done last year by the St Martin's Group. Over 2,500 apprentices were part of a survey, and it focused on who completes an apprenticeship and who doesn't. And what it found is actually, and it won't surprise anyone on the call to know, is that where you complete an apprenticeship, your outcomes are significantly better. So you are more likely to be promoted, you are more likely to have a pay rise, you are more likely to retain employment. So we've all got a vested interest in not only getting apprentices into apprenticeships, but actually doing right by them throughout that as well. What you'll see on the left-hand side from the research was some of the most common reasons why apprentices withdrew from their programme once they'd started, and they all relate to having a not great experience. The single most common reason why apprentices leave is simply lack of employer support. And that, when you read the research, and I would encourage you to read the research, you can have a look at specific groups. And again, this might be helpful if you're thinking about apprenticeships to see why or what they meant by that. For higher level apprenticeships, so level 6 or 7, particularly those who are existing colleagues taking up apprenticeships, it was around workload. Apprentices find it really difficult, as you would imagine, to manage what's sometimes a full-time job with a study programme as well. So that's one of the reasons why people withdrew. But actually new starts, so people coming straight from school, they have some negative reasons as to why they left. And that means that we need to do more to put wraparound support and pastoral care for those apprentices as they transition from school into an apprenticeship as well. So definitely encourage you to read the research to have a look at some of those reasons. So actually, as you're putting in place apprenticeships or guiding people for apprenticeships, you know what to look out for. You'll see on the right-hand side that the same respondents were asked what would have encouraged them to stay. And again, things like support for time to study, support to complete assignments, time for off-their-job training were all things that apprentices pointed towards, but also support networks, access to mentors, etc. Actually, what was surprising from the study was that you were less likely to say financial support, but that was a factor for younger apprentices. So those coming in from school, for example, will require more financial support than perhaps others. So that's just one set of factors to take into consideration. But from our community at the Association of Apprentices, we have 4,500 active members and growing, as I said. Here's some insight around what makes really good programmes for them. Now, we know from wider research that apprentices take up apprenticeships for predominantly career-related reasons, and you'll see here the top things members say they like most about their apprenticeships is it helps them to get on in life, they get recognised qualifications, it helps them with employability, they get ahead. And in fact, if you're designing a programme and you want to mandate an apprentice going on it, they're more likely to leave. I apologise for the formatting of the slide. It's a bit. Sharon will correct that when we send it out, but hopefully you will be able to read it okay. So all of that, taking up an apprenticeship for a career reason correlates with what apprentices like the most. The same group, though, would change the endpoint. So when you go through an apprenticeship and you undertake your endpoint assessment, apprentices say that's probably the most stressful time. So really important. that we're helping to apprentices to see the end, to understand the value of getting to the end of the apprenticeship. Really important, considering that actually when you look at the bottom of that slide, apprentices report the lowest level confidence in career planning and advancement. So that's really important if you're thinking about apprenticeship, is to start with the end in mind there. We saw in the research that support networks were called out as important, as things that would have prevented people from leaving. And why that's important, what our members tell us, is that when you're part of a peer group, they help to normalise what is going on. And apprenticeship's a really unique journey, can be really stressful. And actually, they've got access to hundreds of mentors who are going through the same thing or have been through the same thing. So they're gaining knowledge and experience from others, and it's helping them along that journey. One of the things that I always find really interesting, though, is what apprentices in our community look at, and what you'll see at the bottom right-hand side is the content that's accessed more than anything else. And what it tells us is that apprentices like to know a lot about themselves in order to move forward. And this isn't necessarily part of their apprenticeship training. These are things, however, that do impact the apprenticeship. So we talk about work-life balance, you know, how to have a career conversation, what they know about themselves and how to use that, how to use their strengths, are all really important. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of what's important to those people who are currently on an apprenticeship. And as I say, you know, when you're designing an apprenticeship or advising someone on one, these are all the kind of things that you might want to be thinking about. We work with, at the association, a number of partners and more that you'll see here on the slides, who all understand that sort of tapping into the apprentice voice is really important to help shape programs and help provide a better experience for apprentices. My sort of top 5 things, if I had to sort of summarise, is if you are thinking about hiring an apprentice, to make sure they've got as much information at the recruitment stage as possible. I know that sounds really obvious, but you know, when you're mandating something, or when you're thinking about those people who are leaving because of high workloads, to really paint a realistic picture of what an apprenticeship is like is important. Talk about the end at the beginning. So that is, you know, painting a picture about where the apprenticeship will get them at the end is also really helpful for that, helping with advancement and helping with confidence around career planning. Give them time to do the apprenticeship, so making sure that they've got that right mix of study time and work time, life-work balance, etc. Work closely with line managers. We know line managers either make or break it for an apprentice, so making sure those line managers feel really well supported if you're an employer or training provider, and help apprentices to access support, help them to access mentors, help them to access their peer group through organisations like the association, so that they can share those experiences and receive the advice and take advantage of working towards a learning outcome with others. Thanks, Sharon.
That was really, really interesting. So, you know, doing something that is different angle and being the only one to do, it's really important to find out what's happening. We're going to now invite everybody to join us, all of our speakers, and we're going to have a little panel discussion. I've pulled in some questions, but feel free to add more. I've also dropped a poll in, excuse me, in the chat, or I think it's the red dot you can see there, just to try to get a feel who we have in our audience today, because it kind of helps us with framing the answers too. And apologies for my spelling error. I asked if there's anybody and employers in here. So, but anyway, I'll end that soon, and we can see who we've got joining us. So with some of the questions that we've had raised, Lucy, yours sort of pricked up quite a lot, but I'll go through in kind of order of what was being discussed. And Zach, we wasn't actually asked in the chat, but I think it was brought up in the by Emily about SMEs, and I think Lucy working with some of the smaller trusts and things. What is the Treasury's kind of view in, or a role maybe even, with making it attractive for SMEs? How can they get involved? How can they get apprentices?
Well, I think the government's offer to SMEs is obviously, we see as like relatively financially generous, like funding 95% of the training, asking for a 5% contribution to ensure like some skin in the game, but basically covering the majority of costs. We've also made a number of changes to the apprenticeship system over the year to try and make it simpler and easier to engage with and provide a better portal for them to use it. I think generally, like, the government is very committed to SME numbers and constantly looks at options to do it. So I would say it's one where I could definitely say there was full commitment. And I think we kind of that is shown through the funding offer. I'm not sure what more I could add than that, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah. Do you want to follow on with the SME angle? Because it's something that's really interesting to me. We do get a lot of sorry, that was for Emily. We do get, certainly from my experience, working with our different providers, that the SME market is somewhere that they really want to get into. We hear an awful lot from very large employers who obviously have the budgets, who can do big campaigns, but sort of the attraction locally and for on a smaller scale.
It really varies, I think, from a provider perspective. Because SMEs don't have as much time potentially as large employers, they need more support to access information, to understand funding. Despite best intentions, it is confusing. So there is a role for providers to play in demystifying some of it and helping SMEs to manage their apprentice. But of course, that puts more onus on a provider to do that. And not all providers are able to offer that service. Certainly that particular service isn't funded. But if we can sort of collectively, and large employers do a really good job of this through their supply chain and partners, provide resources, provide case studies, that helps the SMEs that we work with certainly to manage their apprentices. I think that's really helpful. I think probably more can be done to encourage participation throughout the system, not just funding, but I certainly think we've all got a role to play in helping SMEs to manage apprentices.
Yeah, brilliant. Lucy, there's a couple of questions that have come through. One thing that I think is really important to talk about for a moment is what you refer to as the Baker Clause, or the provider access legislation, which I don't know how much of our audience actually knows what that is and what it means.
Okay, so yeah, it's something that's been around for a while, but it's not necessarily been enforced, and it is around providers and employers having access to young people to give careers advice and guidance. So, some of the schools that I've been working with have been doing it for a while and been doing it really well. But then I know there's huge gaps in provision. So I think now it's actually going to be enforced, then that can only be a positive thing. And it just will help young people be able to make informed decisions, because at the moment, if they're only being pushed towards A levels in the traditional route, then they're not being able to make an informed decision, which is a real issue.
It is. And for those of you out there who don't know, all schools and colleges in the UK are required to abide by the career strategy, which is following this Careers and Enterprise Company framework that's made of the Gatsby benchmarks. And one of those is a requirement to give exposure to further education and apprenticeships. I think some schools have navigated their way around it. So they've kind of tried to enforce it with what was nicknamed the Baker Clause, where they tried to put on saying you really have to do this, which didn't have a massive impact, I don't think. So at the start of just this month, I think, it is now legislation. Schools will have to provide evidence that will be Ofsted that they are providing that kind of access.
Yeah, and just on that, one of the schools that I support, I actually had to speak to the Ofsted inspector when they were in, because, for him, it was a real game changer, and he was really, really pleased that they did have such a wide breadth of employers coming in. So yeah, it's definitely something to bear in mind in terms of schools, because Ofsted will grill them on it. And if it's all just kind of, a piece of paper that's in the staff room and not actually being enforced, then they will come unstuck.
Thank you, Vicky. She's just put in the chat that the PAL, provider access legislation, came into force on the 1st of January this year. So thank you for that. Also, Vicky was, she said a couple of things about this, but there was also, Lucy, Darren had mentioned, and there's been a bit of a discussion in the chat about traineeships and what's happened to them. Again, it probably would help if you explained, because there's T levels, there's traineeships, and then you have apprenticeships, and perhaps maybe what the differences are and what's happening.
Yeah, so I think it was just before Christmas, DfE announced that they were going to be removing the funding for traineeships as they currently stand. It was really, really disappointing to hear, because we've used traineeships for those young people that are not ready for an apprenticeship. You know, could be NEETs, it could be a while since they've been in education, and they really do need that support to kind of progress. And essentially removing that first rung on the ladder is really, really disappointing in terms of social mobility. When we did challenge it with DfE, you know, to be told that T-levels is an alternative just shows that they have no real understanding of who those programs are actually aimed at, because if they were able to do a T-level, they would do a T-level. So I think, yeah, it's really, really disappointing in terms of kind of that social mobility piece, because I know we've got some fantastic stories of young people that, you know, got their confidence doing a traineeship, helped to get a refresher on maths and English to be able to progress into an apprenticeship, and now, you know, we're not going to see how that works moving forward.
Yeah, it's a curious state of affairs. But Emily, do you have any knowledge from your apprentices how many of them came into apprenticeships from the traineeship thing? Is that something that you know?
No, that's not something that we
to find out if that was kind of the first steps. I've gone through some of the questions, and I really was wondering if any of you, well, I'll start with James, has not said a whole lot. If there's something that you wanted to add, or observations or questions that you saw from the conversation in the chat that you'd like to pick up on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's been a really useful debate today, and you know, thank you to Lucy, Zach, and Emily for joining the call today. I think you know, from ongoing conversations with UCAS and a number of other different parties, so much of this is around education. And you know, I was at a talk in London just before Christmas, and I think, as Pete, you might be able to kind of confirm this. Some research was done, looking at how confident teachers are talking about the university approach and the process as opposed to that of an apprenticeship. And I think that 90+% of teachers around the UK in secondary schools and colleges feel confident talking to their students about the route into university. It was only 24%, something like that, of the same audience felt confident talking about an apprenticeship process. And there's so much legacy around what an apprenticeship is, and you know, parents and teachers and carers have got such a massive influence over the children at the school, and obviously their own children. And I think there's still this natural steering away from apprenticeships. It's still got a bit of a, you know, in some contexts there's a sort of dirty connotation or whatever, and it's absolutely not the case. You know, we work with, you know, some really prestigious investment banks and leading tech firms and all the rest of it, and I know from the conversations that I have, they're you know, actively looking at their early talent programs and going, well, look, currently we've got 10 people sitting in that function as a graduate role. Let's swap them out and change them for an apprenticeship role. The opportunities that I think are available and increasingly begun to become available are a real kind of, you know, sort of option that I think more and more parents, teachers, and obviously students are going to be looking at over the years. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's been a great debate today, but I think there's an onus, I think, almost on everybody, whether it be large organizations or SMEs, just to do what they can to kind of educate you know, those in their communities around them. But yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, I'm going to ask everybody else as well, just to see, just give you a bit of a second to frame your thoughts before we shut off. Just to go around before I say our final words. If there's anything that you would like to add, or if there's any kind of point that was raised that you would like to kind of highlight before we go. So Emily, what are your thoughts given what we're saying, or if there's anything further from your own presentation that you felt you really want to raise?
I suppose from my perspective, it's using those apprentices that are currently on the programme to share their experiences. We know that works. We know that when they go back into schools as ambassadors, that works. But I certainly think the point on the teachers is a valid one. So maybe developing more resources for teachers to talk about it. I mean, the dial's turned quite significantly for those of us working in the sector for a number of years. It's a much better position than it has been in, but still feels like there's a lot to do. Certainly the members we have at the association talk about a battle to do an apprenticeship, a battle with their parents, a battle with their teachers. But they absolutely knew that was what they wanted to do. So yes, still some way to go, I think, Sharon.
Great. Yeah, well, it's not great, but yeah, valid point. No, but I do think it's quite sad because you know, being a judge, and as is Lucy, for the multicultural apprenticeship awards, when I'm doing the judging and reading all the nominations, it's never ceases to shock me how few have found out about their apprenticeship from actual school. Zach, I know you're kind of having to sit on the fence a bit there with being the Treasury. So I'm just going to see if you're going to say anything radical, or if you want to add anything that's going to make us all leave this wildly happy.
Not sure I can promise that, but I think a really interesting part of the discussion is obviously, about careers guidance and about how young people make choices about their careers, and how that is very difficult in the UK, where we have such a culture of pointing people towards one pathway. I think that's something that we hear loud and clear, and government and are very committed to correcting. And I think we've obviously the government has done a lot of reforms in this area in recent years, both on apprenticeships, T-levels, and trying to change the landscape there. So I think a key message I've taken away from this is that still, whilst you might have kind of put out those offerings, that still definitely needs to be brought together in the way it's communicated to young people, and that's probably a big challenge in order to try and change really change mindsets and change how people view it when they get to that age.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say that that's certainly, with our experience at Careermap, we've actually built all of our magazines and build all the events because there is a real hunger for resources and the finding out of what the opportunities are. I think also there's a real kind of move about talking about apprenticeships, but it still seems to be very much about degree apprenticeships, which sounds to be more like talking about it as a free way to university, as opposed to looking at as a different kind of vocational kind of pathway. And I'm going to rant for a second longer. Some of the qualifications, apprenticeships don't always have to be a degree. Everyone wants to get a degree, I suppose, but if you're going to go into something, quite often you'll have to get professional qualifications that will be more important than the degree itself, just for your specialism. So, but that's anything about Lucy. You always have something to say before we go. I'm sure you're going to leave us on a challenging note.
Yeah, no, I'll just say that in terms of resources for teachers, there's some exciting stuff on the horizon from the Careers and Enterprise Company. They've approached us about kind of doing train the trainer sessions for teachers, because I think, we know that certainly apprenticeships have evolved so quickly, and I still get, even though I've been in this role for 7 years, people say, oh, I didn't know the NHS did apprenticeships. They still think it's around the trades or hairdressing. So I think that would be really exciting. And also to plug the amazing apprenticeships resources for parents and for teachers. As you said, Sharon, the fact that young people are having to convince their parents that degree apprenticeships are actually, in my mind, a no-brainer, shows that there's still a lack of information out there. So definitely have a look at the parent packs and the teacher packs that Amazing Apprenticeships do. And yeah, there's one question in the chat from Andrew that we haven't seen, and it's around what employers can do to collaborate around changing this legacy mindset on traditional routes. And I think, as I said, I've been in this role for 7 years now, and it is evolving. And I think using, cyber, IT, digital as a example, employers are seeing that by the time the traditional route come out of university, those skills are now out of date, and are seeing more and more that the apprenticeship route is a more attractive option, because they can actually put those skills and experience into the workplace, and they don't have to train them when they start as grads. So I think, watch this space. I think we are going to see more of a shift in terms of that kind of progression.
Right. I also wanted to say, Andrew had just mentioned in the chat that we need to have these conversations earlier. That is something else that's a big trend that's coming through. We at Careermap start our kind of conversations from school leaver, but actually by that stage, many of them have already chosen their GCSEs and A levels, and that actually it's time to start having conversations in primary school. Maybe not more than, what do you want to be when you grow up? Start to talk about aspirations, inspiration, and where you're going, but widening their understanding, because we were all in agreement, parents are such a large influence, and being able to get them to notice and look broader. And we'll be working with education and employers, the CDI, and with Pixel Primary this summer doing a big push for primary, both an event and a special guide for primary school education. But we are nearly out of time. Really fantastic attendance, some really engaged chat in the box, which is great, super insight from our guests. As we said, all of this is being recorded and will be sent out to everybody who's registered, along with the slides. So I think all there is to do now is to say a big thank you to our guests, Zach, Emily, and Lucy. And from me and James, thank you everybody for coming, and hopefully we'll do this again soon. Any last words, Zach, James?
No, just thank you everyone for your time, and obviously echoing your thoughts to the speakers today. Really interesting insight. The tanker is moving. It's a big tanker, but it is moving slowly. But yeah, everyone keep doing what they're doing, and hopefully the message will get out there.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And before I end the session, if you want to look through the chat, if there's any links that you want to click on in the meantime before we send this out, do that quickly, because once we're gone, we're gone. Thanks, everyone. And
thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.